Thom Hartmann here with you. Oh man, this story of this Vietnamese immigrant, Vietnamese American doctor being dragged off this United Airlines flight on Sunday has just exploded, and there's like multiple levels to this that actually make this story something that is much larger than just, you know, the apparent casual brutality of guys who have badges and guns, or the casual brutality of a giant corporation that, you know, when you buy their product, you are automatically signing a contract which says that you may not sue them, you are forced into binding arbitration, and that you, even though you think you bought an airplane ticket, they're not really guaranteed, you know, guaranteeing you that seat. And I want to get into some of those things. There's that stuff. There's a lot of stories out there actually that are really interesting. There's just a couple of kind of pop you through a couple quick things, and we'll come back to them as we go through the program a little later on. Larry Cohen's going to be with us. By the way, a bunch of elections happening around the country today. He will be with us in our third hour, and Professor Tom Snyder will be with us in the next hour. But Washington Post Wonk blog has an interesting piece about how Obamacare, you'll recall Marco Rubio destroyed the risk corridors. Well, there's another piece to this, and it has another name. It's not just risk corridors. It's, oh, where did it go here? Well, there's another phrase for it anyway, and it's the insurers, you know, a certain level of support, basically. They're called cost-sharing subsidies. And if the Republicans don't renew those, Obamacare collapses. And they don't have to do anything. They just don't do it, right? And so it's like there's all this kind of behind-the-scenes, let's destroy Obamacare stuff so that they can sit around and brag about how, you know, oh, it just fell in on itself, when actually it was Republicans, you know, destroying it. But to the airline. This fellow, it turns out his name is Dr. Dow. He was a Vietnamese immigrant, I don't know, refugee, immigrant, whatever, who became an American citizen. He is a physician. He is married to a physician. His wife is a pediatrician. She was traveling with him. And what we're seeing here, I think, is you know, the direct consequence of airline deregulation. In 1983. Back in '78, Louise and I sold an advertising agency in Okemos, Michigan, in Lansing, and an herbal tea company. And we moved to New Hampshire and bought 130 acres of land and started this community for abused kids up there. And we ran that for about 5 years. And in '82, we moved to Atlanta and with our kids, and, you know, left that program in good hands. It's been running up until just last year. It just finally closed. And it was a fine program. Basically, we got robbed by the bank, which is a whole other story that I'll tell you sometime. But the robbed and ripped off by a bank. But the anyhow, we moved to Atlanta, and I owned my best friend Jerry Schneiderman and I. He lives in New York. I was living in Atlanta. We had started this little company called Langley St. Clair Instrumentation Systems. We were selling computer parts. We bought the back cover of Byte magazine, if you're old enough to remember Byte, B-Y-T-E magazine, for like a half a year, and we were selling computer parts. And I was traveling to Asia, negotiating deals to get these computer parts. You know, I was one of those terrible importers. And we were selling anti-radiation screen shields and stuff. This was back in the days of CRTs. And one of the things I discovered when we were in Atlanta was that there was no travel agency that really was committed to the needs of small travelers like me. Business travelers, frequent travelers, but, you know, I would call travel agencies and say, would you like my business? And they would say, how many employees do you have? And I'd say, you know, me. And they'd say, no, you know, we have to have 10 employees, you know, for the big agencies. Or I'd call and I'd say, you know, do you do business travel? And they'd go, no, we do leisure travel. We do cruises and things. So Louise and I saw this and said, hey, here's a business opportunity. Let's start a travel agency, specifically for small businesses, which we did. We started it. It was called Sprayberry Travel. Our corporate name was International Wholesale Travel, DBA Sprayberry Travel, which was the region of Marietta up there where we lived in Newt Gingrich's district, where Tom Price is running for re-election today. No, a week from today. Not Tom Price is running for re-election, but there's a Democrat running for his seat. We'll be talking with Larry about that in 2 hours. But anyhow, we started this travel agency, and in '78 the airlines had been deregulated, but it was starting to really take hold in the airline business, but the travel agency business was just catching up. Most travel agents were still basically running like librarians. But prior to deregulation, if you had an airline ticket, you were, the airline had to make sure that you got where you were going. You were guaranteed a seat. And you also had the right to sue. Now, what has happened to the right to sue? 5 right-wing judges on the Supreme Court have decided that no, if you, quote, sign a contract, in other words, buy a product and click that little, yes, I agree to the terms and services, as you have to do when you buy a ticket from United or any other airline, you're agreeing to not sue. You're agreeing to binding arbitration. Arbitration almost always goes the way of the corporation, which is why Gorsuch and John Roberts and Clarence Thomas and Sam Alito and why these guys love this so much, right? And Anthony Kennedy, why it's always a 5-4 decision. But here's a quote. This is from Robert Crandall. Now, when we started this this travel agency in '83. From scratch. I started it with a $15,000 line of credit on my American Express card. We were just, after running a community for abused kids for 5-6 years, we were flat out of money. We were broke as broke. And so we started this travel agency, and we started a frequent flyer program for our small frequent flyers, where every month we'd rent out a restaurant and people would come and we'd get the airlines to give us a free flight, and everybody would come and bring a suitcase, and somebody at the end of the night would be put on a plane and driven out to the airport and go off to Cancun for the weekend or something like that. And it really worked well. We did a newsletter. We did a lot of promotion. My background was in advertising and marketing. And we built this up to a $6 million travel agency in 3 years. It was one of the fastest growing in the United States. It made the front page of the Wall Street Journal. And we sold it in '86, which gave us the money and allowed us to move to Germany with our kids and really start doing international relief work. But one of the things that I did when I was working in the travel industry, because our agency was doing so well and because it was getting so much publicity, is the airlines and the cruise companies would hire me to do seminars teaching their people how to work in this newly deregulated environment, how to do marketing, how to do advertising, how to do customer service. And I used to work for American Airlines. Bob Crandall, the guy I'm about to quote to you. That's why I'm giving you this backstory. So, and Robert Crandall was one of the smartest CEOs in the business. American Airlines started the first frequent flyer program. We imitated him at Sprayberry Travel. So here's what he said as a consequence of deregulation. He said, our airlines, once world leaders, are now laggards in every category, including fleet age, service quality, and international reputation. Airline congestion has become a staple of late-night comedy shows. Passenger complaints have skyrocketed. Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection filings show airline deregulation was a mistake. Robert Crandall, CEO of American Airlines. When deregulation was done in October of '78, Jimmy Carter jumped on the deregulation bandwagon in the last 2 years of his presidency. And of course, Reagan and other presidents forward just carried it as far as they possibly could. But the Deregulation Act was signed on October 24th, '78. And at that point in time, or over the next couple of years, there were 129 airlines in the United States. By 2003, there were 15. Right now, we have 3 major airlines and a couple of discounters and a couple of regional airlines. This is monopoly. And it's not just the airline industry. I mean, this guy gets dragged off the flight, and like I said, it kind of shows us the brutality of this. The Chicago police had to get in the act, right? The police departments, it's almost like they have to reflexively lie about police violence. It wasn't even a Chicago cop. These were police officers. These were either federal cops, air marshal types, or they were employees of United Airlines. And I haven't seen a news story that clearly defines who exactly these 3 guys who dragged this guy off the flight and left him all bloody worked for. But the Chicago police, which had nothing to do with this, says Aviation officers arrived on the scene attempting to carry the individual off the flight when he fell. His head subsequently struck an armrest, causing injuries to his face. Yeah, right. It's like, we're police. We lie. That's, you know, and I realize there are a couple of good cops out there. You know, and there are good police departments, but it's in the United States, it's increasingly a struggle. But that's kind of a digression. Oscar Munoz, who is the CEO of United's parent company, he's saying, oh, you know, to his employees, everything we did, it was just wonderful. But here's where it's getting really weird. The physician who was dragged off, and you wonder why he reacted as strongly as he did. The guy was an immigrant from Vietnam, communist Vietnam that has been through hell, and probably anybody living there has been through hell. I wonder if he thought he was being deported. I wonder if he thought ICE had come. Who knows? I mean, God only knows what he thought. But one of the passengers, Tyler Bridges, told the Washington Post that he said, "I'm being selected because I'm Asian." That was translated into Chinese, and 160 million Chinese have read that on China's version of Twitter, Sina Weibo, and with 97,000 comments. This thing has gone totally viral in China. Now, that's part of the story. I think the more important part of the story is that yesterday, United stock was actually up. And there's a fascinating article about this over on Financial Times, talking about how pundits might think the episode, I'm quoting from the article, pundits might think the episode was a PR disaster, but investors seem impressed by the sadistic commitment to cost control. In other words, situations like this may become more common in the future, unless, of course, customers start paying up to avoid it. Because basically what they said was, yeah, you know, if he'd been in first class, it wouldn't have happened. I want to share a little more of that with you. In fact, I've got the exact language from United's terms of service, the contract that you sign when you buy a ticket. And this, of course, isn't just to United. This is basically all the all the U.S. airlines. We'll be right back with this.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
But I'm basically thinking we need to seriously start re-regulating not just the airlines, but all of American industry and breaking these giants up.